Well, Jeff Parker is going to be joining us here on the program. He's your Chief Executive Officer, and we have a kind of a good news really for the COVID report. It looks like we've been on the watch not watch list for a couple of days.
5 days now.
That's pretty good.
So it's pretty good. Good morning, Paul. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. Looking forward to a weekend, right?
Yeah, no, almost the end of August.
Yeah,
which
unbelievable.
This calendar year now seems to be going really, really fast.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things that are going to be happening here in the next month too here in our community, and we'll share that with some of our residents. But let's talk about some of the COVID numbers. The community, of course, is doing a terrific job.
Right, and still holding steady on our numbers, which is really good, and keeping it nice and low. So appreciate again the community wearing their mask and being protective out there. So as of yesterday, we had 369 cases reported. Again, that seems to be fluctuating. There's one day that it's in the hundreds or 200s and back up to the 300s. But the good news is that, as you can see on the chart there, the testing positive percentage is at 5%, which is really the goal that the governor and everybody that's involved with the health agencies from the state down to the local level have always been focusing. If they can get that at that 5%, that really shows that the positivity rate is a slow progression, kind of the 1-to-1 or less than 1-to-1. So that means that they have much greater strength in identifying it, where it's at, and who's spreading it.
Right.
So I know the governor was supposed to speak today about reopening some of businesses. Good. So we'll see where that goes. I think everybody's obviously concerned though, don't overdo it. They also have a holiday coming up in a week, and so that's when they've seen spikes too on the holiday weekends, 4th of July. So when you have Memorial Day and then Labor Day, we'll see how that comes into play. 31% on available beds is good. That number is, and as you indicated, the red number there are 5 days off on the county list or on the state list that the county has no longer been. So that's holding steady and increasing every day, and that's a good thing. The one sad note of all of this reporting, unfortunately, is that they had reported 29 deaths. Which is a big number. Right. That's probably one of the highest numbers we've seen in a one-day total. And I don't know, because I don't have the ability to get in there, whether that's accumulation of 2 or 3 days of numbers. Oftentimes that's the case. Right. But that is a pretty big number.
I think I saw that. They said there was a lag in a couple of days in getting that reporting. So
I did look, and those most of those deaths reported, however, are people not in rest homes and not in facilities. So they're people that were in those ICUs. Right. And so that's a sad note. But for Orange County, they're getting up pretty high now, almost 1,000 deaths. So that is something that we'll obviously keep an eye on. Don't want to see a whole lot more of that, obviously, and so if we continue, I think, in the productive cases per 100,000 and the positive rate, then we're going to have more beds available and more activity and ability to handle what's out there.
It's interesting, too, the number of days off of the county monitoring list when the threshold is really right around Labor Day.
Right.
So I know that my wife is very involved with the local middle school, and a lot of the people are talking about going back to school on September 8th, which is the day after. Right. I believe they'll still kind of work with that staggered schedule. So not all the kids are going to be showing up at 8 o'clock in the morning. They'll actually have some kids show up at 8, some will show up at 9:45, or they'll rotate days. So hopefully we continue to stay on that list there and get us to 15, I think, is the threshold. And once they actually start discussing the next phase.
And then they can get into the ideas of opening up other activities.
Right.
I think that's critical to listening to the LA County health officer was talking about even if they do kind of relax some of the restrictions and start to open up, they wanted to go very slowly because of the Labor Day weekend, because they don't want to see a spike and then have plans to get kids back in school the very next day, just like you talked about, and find out that they have a lot of a higher infection rate because of the weekend. Right. So I think anybody that's looking at a reopening or bringing kids back ought to be very cautious going into that first week after the...
It'll be interesting to see how they kind of transition that whole process. I know my kids and my wife yesterday got flu shots at the their regular checkup, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of requirements are needed for people to go back to school and work and things of that nature. So I think we're on the right track, though.
Right, and from here with VMS, we're still very much telecommuting with our employees and limiting the amount of people that are coming into the office, and we'll continue to operate that way for, I would say, a substantial time, clearly to the end of the year, and then we'll see at the beginning of the year how we can phase back in, and as we indicated to GRF, probably once we see a vaccine in place, that's when we can see actually implementation of reopening facilities.
Right. And speaking of facilities, we all know that tennis and paddle tennis and pickleball are real popular sports here in our community. You've done some changes with the reservation process, and we just want to share that with our community.
Sure. As of yesterday, basically, we started a new reservation online program, and it's much easier to access and get on and get your court reserved. We have a number of people out there, though, that we know that don't have an app on their phone or don't have a computer access that's comfortable for them. They can still make the reservation by calling the recreation department to get access to those courts. But we know that this reservation system, because we tested it out quite strongly, is much easier to access and much easier to control the courts and make sure people get their time slotted. If this continues to work effectively, then we'll take the same reservation system will be able to be used for our pools too.
Oh, great.
Which is that's the next step.
Sure.
But right now we're just working with the two activities that we know real well that we can get online first and make that work.
Well, that's good because, obviously there's going to be many changes when we all get back to normal, and that is a positive change that can continue on for our community, and obviously it's going to help staff time as well.
Correct.
And then, calling, writing down phone number, getting back, that process sometimes can have a bump in the road, and this way we can get it all done digitally, basically. And get people on the course.
It certainly will make it smoother. The old system was convoluted, and we had a lot of telephone call reservations versus online. So we're trying to move towards more online registration, but we will have, like I said, for those that don't have that service or don't have that capability, we will still be able to get you a reservation via phone.
That's good news. Well, we have the GRF meeting starts on Tuesday. Unbelievable, like you said, it's September 1st already. That'll be their first meeting for September. This is going to be the budget process during this month.
It is. So starting back in June and even before that, staff putting together the budgets and everything, and then we went through what we call version 1 and version 2 with the boards. And after version 2, that was their televised meeting, if you recall that, that you guys helped put on. So after they finished with version 2, that basically is their solid budget is done then. And now we put it into a resolution form, and that resolution is formally adopted at their board meetings in September. So like you said, Tuesday GRF is the first one, followed by United, and then followed by Third.
Right. And it looks like the budgets are pretty good. The board members and directors seem to be in agreement in most part with the budget, and VMS staff and especially the finance department did a wonderful job in trying to put this together for everyone.
And so the real important thing I wanted to mention about that, and I appreciate that, is with regards to GRF and United, they are looking at a zero increase in their base assessments. GRF and that certainly affects, when GRF keeps theirs at zero, that means United and Third don't have the impact that residents do. With regards to United, their assessment is at zero growth, and that's staying the same as last year's. The caveat on that I want to mention, obviously, is they get on the kind of the back end their property tax and property insurance separately. So we're still anticipating an increase there because of the unfortunate increased costs that we're seeing with regards to property insurance. And we're still working on that and hope to have all of our insurance locked in by October 1st.
Right, and those are two things that we really can't control. I mean, we all get property taxes and we're like, wow, that's a lot more than last year's, but it goes by property value, and the county kind of, county does, start that process. And then, like you said, with the fires we've been experiencing even up north, I mean, that affects the entire state, and that affects our community. So those rates will go up.
And it's difficult because we're now in this We saw the rates go up last year. We also saw the insurance carriers change and what they would be willing to carry and what they're not willing to carry. And that continues on this year. And I think an example of that is what you're talking about is everybody's seeing these fires up in Northern California, and what's the impact on the insurance business? It may not be substantial this year because you're kind of getting locked in, but that may be if there's a lot of claims that come out of that, it may be the insurance companies in next year drop out of the equation.
Right.
And that's what we saw. We had the hurricanes. You have two hurricanes that hit the Gulf Coast back to back, and fires here in the West. And there's fires all over the Western United States, not just California. It's Colorado and Wyoming and those states. A lot of fires. So that really does impact the overall prospect of how we're going to do insurance, and that's what we're looking at right now. What are some alternatives? Is there a different way to look at insurance? And all of them are looking at that right now.
Right. And one of the interesting items too is your insurance premiums expire in October, and yet the budget is usually a calendar. So we got to kind of work with that and anticipate what those costs might be, which is difficult to do. Yeah.
Exactly. That's really the challenge right now, is because of the way it's structured. We put the budget all together and we kind of estimate what it's going to be, and then hopefully our broker's done a good job to keep it in line with that. But it will be interesting to see how we do this year, and then going forward, I think we're all looking at is there a new way that we can look at it? Is there ways that we can modify it so the impact's not as great?
Right, absolutely. Well, before we let you go, we want to remind the residents too that we're going to have a meeting on Monday that'll be live here on Village Television at 10:30, and that'll be an election of Golden Rain Foundation officers.
Right, they have a position that they have a vacancy right now, and they need to fill. And this is because their election rules and everything. They could keep a position open. It's a certain amount of days before their regular election, but this one was beyond that, so they went ahead and advertised, and this will fill that position. It'll be a short-term fill, but then that position will be up for election again. And so that I would suspect the person that gets elected would be running for it again.
Right, obviously. Okay, great. Well, we want to encourage you to be sure and tune into that. That's going to be at 10:30 on Monday here on Village Television. I believe they have about 6 candidates for that one position. So we look forward to bringing that to you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program today. We hope you enjoy your weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Jeff Parker. He's our Chief Executive Officer for Village Management Services, and he brings us an update usually every Monday and Friday of each week, and we appreciate that. We'll be back with more right after this.